Disneyland and Disney World have been home to the world's most iconic rides and attractions ever since they were first opened in 1955 and 1971 respectively. Rides like the Tower of Terror, It's a Small World have been around for decades and will most likely be around forever, keeping kids and parents alike enthralled in the magic that is Disney. But over the years, Disney parks have obviously had to be revamped and changed to keep the parks modern and on the cutting edge of theme park technology. And while that's a good thing overall, it does unfortunately mean that some of the attractions and rides have to be closed, torn down, and replaced with newer, more modern rides. I'm your host as always, K-Mac Time, and today I want to take a look at 10 of the best rides that have sadly been lost to time in both Disneyland and Disney World. Now sit back, grab a snack, and smash that like button because we're kicking off this list with number 10, The Timekeeper. Now, this ride first opened back in 1994 and marked the first time that the Circle Vision 360 film was shown at Disney parks. Now, this is a style of filming that was developed by Disney Studios and uses 9 cameras and 9 different screens arranged in a circle in order to immerse the audience in the film. It's actually a really cool way of doing it. Anyway, The Timekeeper was actually narrated by one of my all-time favorite actors and Disney veteran, Robin Williams, so you know it has some of the best voice work ever done. The ride takes you across time, including seeing the dinosaurs, ice ages, visiting famous people like Leonardo da Vinci and others. Unfortunately, though, the ride was closed in 2006 and has since been replaced with Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. Next up is an old-timey classic ride called Rocket Jet, which was a staple in the Tomorrowland park for nearly 30 years. It first opened back in 1967 at the height of the space race, and kids loved everything to do with outer space and rockets at the time. The ride itself, however, was a simple carnival spinning style ride that had Saturn V rockets as the cars that could hold the 2 passengers each. When the ride was shut down in 1997, it was converted into a sculpture that plays music every 15 minutes. The rockets were replaced with satellites, and it still functions as this music box today. Disney, however, did keep a rocket-themed spinning ride that's similar to this in the park, replacing rocket jets with the Astro Orbiter, which opened in 1998. A fan favorite for decades was the iconic Skyway transportation system that Disneyland was known for. Fans of the park were able to get a bird's eye view of the park and take in the magic for nearly 60 years. The Skyway was opened in 1956 and was expanded in 1959 and even made its way through the Matterhorn Mountain, which is a really cool part of this. However, it was sadly closed in 1994. The reason for this was attributed to metal fatigue and stress cracks in the structure of the actual supports for this, and the only way to do maintenance on them was to open up the Matterhorn Mountain, and it was just deemed not cost effective. The station in Tomorrowland was removed soon after the closure, but the Fantasyland station remained until 2016 when it was demolished to make way for the new Star Wars park. One of my personal favorite attractions from my childhood visits to Disney parks was Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, which is a spin-off of the popular 1990s film Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and it's a 4D film that takes the audience through a wild series of events and uses some pretty cool tricks to make the audience feel like they're the characters in the events on the movie are actually real and happening in front of them. Things like blowing air on the guests' feet to make it feel like mice are running through the theater, and using 3D technology, it really was ahead of its time, made this ride stand out as an attraction in the park, which is why I was so saddened to hear when they were closing it down. The ride was shut down for good in 2010 and replaced with Captain EO tribute as a way to pay respects for the passing of Michael Jackson, who made that film for Disney prior to his death. Another ride that nearly all Disney fans were sad to see go was Horizons, which was part of Epcot's Future World and was originally opened in October of 1983. The ride used what is called the Omni Mover technology, which uses movement and lighting to convey a sense of immersion to the audience. Going along with the Future World theme, Horizons was heavily animatronic based, giving you glimpses into the future of scenes featuring technology that we could only imagine at the time. However, as time passed and the distant future became the not so distant future, the ride was talking about times that weren't too far off, and the ride had to be required to a complete overhaul. And instead of this, Disney chose to pull the plug on a fan favorite back in 1999 and make room for the new Mission Space ride that would now open in that spot in 2003. Next up is another classic ride that portrayed the pop-up version of the history of flight. Now, the ride was originally called If You Had Wings, and it opened in 1972, and it was named If You Could Fly before being rebranded a third time and reopened as Dream Flight in 1989, and when Delta Airlines sponsored the ride. This is another Omni-Mover ride that utilizes audio projection and animatronics to give guests a sense of movement. The ride was a fan favorite, but in 1995, Delta pulled its sponsorship of the ride, and it was again renamed to just Dream Flight, and finally to just Take Flight in 1996, which came in a slight refurbishment and removal of all Delta Airlines references. The attraction was sadly finally shut down in 1998 and has since been replaced by the Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger spin. One of the most iconic early Disney park attractions had to be the futuristic tram system called the People Mover. Built back in 1961, the tram was an amazing way for guests to get around the park and take in all the sights and magic at the same time. The name People Mover was actually just a placeholder while the project was in production, but ended up sticking with the staff so much that it became the final name for the ride. It would give guests a grand circle view of Tomorrowland for nearly 3 decades before it was shut down in 1995. Also, an interesting tidbit about the ride, multiple people have actually died on this attraction, mostly back in the 1970s before safety standards were harshly enforced. But anyway, the ride was replaced by a short-lived ride called Rocket Rods, which was only open from 1998 until 2001. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was a ride so incredibly ahead of its time. It just really goes to show how much talent the Disney Imagineers have and always have had. Anyway, the ride took guests on a submarine voyage through the lagoon. The ride features full animatronics and audio as fans look deep into the sea and catch a glimpse of what life in the ocean is actually like. It even features a giant squid attack, just like in the 1954 Disney film that the ride gets its name from. Despite being a Disney fan favorite, Disney decided in 1994 to temporarily close the ride to assess its profitability. Ultimately, they determined that despite its popularity and history behind the ride, it was not cost effective because of the high cost to maintain it, as well as the limited and low number of guests that it could serve per hour. So in 1996, Disney closed the ride for good and changed the name of the area, the lagoon, to Ariel's Grotto, which itself was drained and removed in 2004 to make way for Pooh's Playful Spot, and then again changed in 2010 and become the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train ride. Snow White's Scary Adventure is just that, scary, and it opened back in the Magic Kingdom in 1971, and the attraction was known for its frightening ability it had on children, and it's what made it so special to the guest. In one scene, the Wicked Witch offers guests a poisonous apple, and in the original version of the guest could actually step over and out of boundaries, it could actually reach and steal the apple as a souvenir, and it happened apparently way too often, as the apple had to be replaced many times. Now, this was eventually replaced with an image of an apple being reflected off a mirror, so that if someone tried to steal it, they would just put their hands through a picture that was just not there. Anyway, the ride was completely overhauled in 1994 and had some of its scarier parts toned down, which is kind of unfortunate. But anyway, it was finally given the axe for good in 2012 to make way for the new Princess Fairy Tale Hall. However, the original version of the ride still exists in Disneyland in California if you'd like to scare your kids there. And finally, one of the coolest rides to ever be decommissioned has to be Mission to Mars. Now, the ride was originally named Rocket to the Moon and opened in 1955 along with Disneyland. The ride was refurbished as Flight to the Moon in 1967, and then in 1975, the destination was changed to Mars because humans had already been to the moon, and it just made more sense that way. Anyway, visitors sat in a circular room meant to replicate the inside of a spaceship, and a projected video on the ceiling mimicked space flight. It was such an awesome idea, such a really cool concept, so ahead of its time. Anyway, the ride was sadly closed in 1992 and was planned to be remade into the extraterrestrial alien encounter attraction like the one in Florida had. However, due to high budget cuts, the project was scrapped and the building remained unused until it was repurposed into Red Rocket's Pizza Port in 1998. So there you guys have it, 10 Disney rides that have been closed for good, but there are so many other amazing rides that I didn't even get a chance to get to in this video. If you guys want to see more history behind these rides and more history behind these theme parks, drop a like and leave a comment down below letting me know I should make more. Also, if you guys want to be subscribed for this and get more Disney goodness in your sub boxes daily, and don't forget to check out my previous Disney videos, links in the end slate and description. But until next time, guys, remember that it's always KMAC time somewhere, so take it easy and peace out.